In the small farming town of Dry Creek, people whispered about the Harvest Man, a spirit said to rise from Raven's Field every Halloween to claim liars, thieves, and promise breakers. Jonah never believed the stories, until his best friend Marcus died their last Halloween. Everyone called it an accident, a tractor fire, but Jonah saw the strange symbols burned into the dirt and the way the scarecrow's head had turned toward him that night. This Halloween, Jonah went back. He wanted answers. Fog hung low over the fields as he parked his truck near the gate. The scarecrow stood tall in the moonlight, its wooden head cracked, mouth shaped like a crooked smile. Real hair hung from its scalp. The sight made Jonah's skin crawl. He unfolded an old sheet of paper, a copy of the harvest ritual he'd found online. At midnight, offer your truth. Speak your name into the scarecrow's mouth and cut your palm. If the harvest man accepts, he will answer. If not, you will feed the field. Jonah knelt before the scarecrow, lit a lantern, and whispered, Jonah Miller. I want to know why Marcus died. He sliced his palm, and let the blood drip into the soil. For a moment, nothing happened, then, far off, something moved in the corn. It sounded like footsteps. Heavy. Slow. The scarecrow's head creaked and turned toward him. Its wooden mouth opened, and a dry whisper escaped, Truth bleeds. Jonah stumbled back. From the rows of corn, shapes emerged, tall, thin figures wrapped in straw. Their eyes glowed faintly orange. One stepped closer. Jonah froze. It was Marcus. His face was pale, burnt, his mouth sewn shut with black thread. He reached out, trembling, and behind him, dozens of other figures whispered in unison, Feed the field. Jonah ran. The lantern flickered out. He pushed through the endless corn, but no matter where he turned, the scarecrow stood waiting ahead, always watching. Desperate, he slashed at it with his knife, cutting into its chest, but instead of straw, warm blood spilled out. The scarecrow grabbed his wrist with impossible strength. The ground began to move beneath him. He looked down, hands, skeletal and dirt-covered, were pushing up from the soil, grabbing his legs. The voice returned, deep and cold, You lied. You promised him safety. Jonah's breath caught. He remembered that night, Marcus begging him not to leave, Jonah laughing it off. He had promised to come back. He never did. Tears filled his eyes. Please. I didn't mean to. The harvest man keeps what is owed. The scarecrow's face split open, light burning from within. It pulled Jonah close, pressing his bleeding palm against its chest. The earth opened beneath them, swallowing him whole. When morning came, Raven's Field was silent again. The scarecrow now wore Marcus's jacket, and carved into its wooden chest were two words, Truth paid. That season, the corn grew taller than ever before, red-tinged and strangely warm to the touch. And every Halloween, if you walk past the field at midnight, locals swear they hear two voices in the wind, whispering, Feed the field. It was Halloween night in the small, fog-soaked town of Bracken Hollow, a place where the living didn't stay out after midnight, and where the dead were said to walk freely once every 31 nights of October. For years, people whispered about the Hollow Church, a burnt-out ruin deep within the forest where strange lights flickered and chanting could be heard at the stroke of midnight. Evelyn had grown up hearing those stories from her grandmother, tales of villagers who disappeared after trying to perform the midnight ritual. But Evelyn was a skeptic. She was a modern girl, a psychology major who believed fear lived in the mind, not in the dark. So when her friends dared her to spend Halloween night inside the hollow church, she accepted, determined to prove the legends false once and for all. The journey into the woods was silent except for the crunch of dead leaves beneath their feet. The moon hung low, pale and swollen, casting silver light on the ruins that rose ahead. The church looked almost skeletal, blackened beams like ribs, its bell tower leaning to one side. The air was thick with decay. "Creepy," said Nate, nervously filming on his phone. "People really died here." "Supposedly," Evelyn said with a smirk. "They say a preacher went mad during a sermon. He locked the doors and set the church on fire, with everyone inside. After that, anyone who tried to rebuild it vanished." Maya shuddered. "Then why do this?" "Because," Evelyn said, setting down her lantern, "I want to see if fear is contagious, if I can feel terror, just because everyone else believes in it." Inside the ruins, the walls were covered in soot and faint scratches, names carved into stone, some crossed out violently. In the center stood a charred altar, still intact after all these years. Beneath it lay a hollow cavity, dark and deep. Nate pointed his flashlight inside. "Looks like a crawl space." "Or a grave," Maya muttered. Evelyn smiled. "Perfect place for a ritual." According to legend, the ritual was simple. At exactly midnight, you were supposed to light a candle on the altar, say your full name 3 times, and then whisper the phrase, "I return what was taken." Supposedly, it summoned the spirits trapped inside the church, the ones who burned there, unable to rest. When the clock on Nate's phone hit 12 o'clock, Evelyn struck a match and lit the candle. The flame flickered violently, bending sideways though there was no wind. She cleared her throat and began. "My name is Evelyn Grace Harper. I return what was taken." The moment she finished, the ground trembled slightly. Maya gasped. Nate's flashlight blinked off, plunging them into darkness except for the single candle. Then came the sound, faint at first, like wood creaking, then unmistakable. Footsteps. "Who's there?" Nate shouted. No answer. The temperature dropped sharply, their breath fogging in the air. The candle flame flared high, casting the shadow of the altar onto the wall, except the shadow showed 4 figures standing, not 3. Maya screamed. "There's someone behind us." They turned, but saw only the empty doorway. The forest outside seemed to pulse with movement, shapes shifting between the trees. Suddenly, Evelyn's candle went out. Total blackness. Every Halloween, the abandoned Briarwood Asylum became a playground for thrill seekers. Its hallways stretched endlessly, and legends claimed the asylum housed 13 doors, each leading to a different part of the afterlife. Only the bravest dared to find the final door, the 13th, and perform the candle ritual. Riley wasn't brave. But he was desperate. His sister, Clara, had vanished a year ago, after sneaking into Briarwood on Halloween night with her friends. They'd found everyone else, traumatized, incoherent, but not her. Riley couldn't move on without answers. So on October 31st, armed with a flashlight, his sister's necklace, and a single candle, he entered the asylum. The air was thick with mold and dust. The walls were scribbled with strange drawings, spirals, eyes, numbers scratched deep into the paint. Every creak of the old building sounded like a whisper. He counted the doors as he walked, 1, 2, 3, each marked with a Roman numeral. Some were broken, others sealed shut. Behind one, he heard faint breathing. Behind another, scratching. But the further he went, the colder the air grew, until his breath came out in white puffs. At last, he reached door 13. It was unlike the others, perfectly intact, with a handle made of black iron shaped like a claw. On the wood, carved deep, were the words, "One light to see. One name to keep." Riley placed the candle on the floor and lit it. The flame burned blue. He whispered his sister's name 3 times, as the legend said, "Clara. Clara. Clara." The air grew still. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. Beyond was a room lined with mirrors. Each reflected something slightly wrong. The walls were darker, his reflection was smiling when he wasn't, and behind that smiling version of himself, shadows shifted like water. Then he saw her, Clara, standing in one of the mirrors. Pale, eyes empty, wearing the same hoodie she'd worn the night she disappeared. "Riley," her voice echoed, soft but warped. "You came back for me." He stepped closer, tears in his eyes. "I'm here. I'll get you out." She raised her hand, pressing it against the glass. "You can. But you have to trade places." He froze. "What?" "The ritual only lets one leave." The candle flickered violently. Behind him, he heard footsteps, dozens of them, shuffling closer though the hallway was empty. The mirror Clara began to smile wider, too wide, her teeth blackened. "You said you'd save me," she whispered. "Say it again." The candle's blue light flared. The mirrors started vibrating, the reflections flickering through faces, his, hers, and others screaming silently. Riley backed away. "You're not my sister." But the figure in the mirror lunged, her arms stretching impossibly long, fingers piercing through the glass. She grabbed his wrist and pulled hard. The glass didn't break, it rippled like liquid. Riley screamed as he was dragged halfway through. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him was his reflection smiling, but it wasn't his reflection anymore. It was Clara, standing outside the mirror, free at last. When police entered Briarwood weeks later, after reports of flickering lights, they found only a melted candle and a necklace on the floor. On the 13th door, someone had scratched a new name into the wood, Riley. And every Halloween since, locals say the candle lights itself, waiting for the next person foolish enough to open the 13th door.